Hello, I'm Amy Banaga, and we are here with Rosemary and a special guest who I'll introduce here in a minute. This is our first video of a new segment on our YouTube channel that we are calling Friday Conversations. And this is where we will be bringing you guest interviews with different spiritual entrepreneurs that we have personally worked with and others that we are just friends with, that we just know in our circle. And the purpose of this is to help our community expand their knowledge of different spiritual practices and to help you all kind of expand your consciousness. And, while on this awakening journey, which really never ends, right? So now to our special guest, Shannon Wiederkehr. So Shannon, I'm going to just read your intro here. So Shannon has a bachelor's of psychology degree as well as an MBA from Georgia Southwestern State University. She has certifications which include Reiki healing 1, 2, and master certification. She also is a Soul Success Unleashed practitioner of aura reading and energy healing. She also does chakra healing, crystal healing, yoga life coaching, hypnotherapy, transformational life coaching, and a plethora of others. And she's currently writing the 12th book in her historical romance series and working on creating a shadow work through movement journal. Her books have routinely hit the top 5, top 10, and top 100 book lists in multiple genres on Amazon. And she currently resides in Southwest Georgia with her husband and 10-year-old daughter, whom she homeschools. You're not too busy, right, Shannon? And Shannon is also an energetic mindset coach with an emphasis on business owners and entrepreneurs. So before we start with our questions, can you just share a little bit about yourself before your awakening and maybe give like a brief timeline of when you got your degrees and certifications, like kind of how were you brought up? Were you in like a strict conservative family, those kind of things?
Well, yeah, this is easy to talk about because I only started doing the more spiritual stuff last August, so 2021. I was raised in a very conservative Christian home, Free Will Baptist. I'm talking Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesdays. And I actually went around the country singing with my little church group. And I was always at church. You know what I mean? I was one of those kids that was always at church. And so I graduated from college, my bachelor's in 2001 and my master's in 2003. And that's about the time that I stopped going to church like all the time because I started traveling more. Egypt, Easter Island, Russia, Jordan, Israel, like I did all the things. And it was just interesting because you see all these different people with their different faiths and they just are like so devoted. It kind of makes you feel like, okay, I'm sorry. In my upbringing, it was like Jesus, Christianity, that's it, the end, everybody else is going to go to hell, like that kind of situation. Whereas, I'm like, I would never be able to stand next to this person that drops down and prays in the middle of the street with the Hallelujah, like over the loudspeaker and everybody stops what they're doing. And I'm like, you're going to tell me that the people that go to church on Sundays have more faith than these people that actually make it a daily habit, carry their mat with them everywhere they go so they can do that. So a lot of the stuff just didn't really gel, except for the commonality is everyone is like praying to something bigger than themselves. And I feel like it's really the same thing. It just has a different name. And I always tell, it's very hard here because I still live in Bible Belt, Georgia. And so a lot of my friends from here, they still don't want to hear that when I'll say, like, when you get to heaven, you're going to see a lot of different people that you didn't think you were going to see. And they're like, no, there's only one religion, like still to this day. So, but I'm a little bit more open-minded. So I've always been a little bit more open-minded. say than my peers, but yeah, that was me, super Christian, super strict, super conservative. And so this has been a complete change of pace. You just have to keep your mind open to all the possibilities of things that could exist and just kind of go with the flow.
We appreciate you talking about that because sometimes it's hard for people. So when did you know that you had psychic gifts?
I mean, I think I've always known. I saw some stuff when I was younger, but also I kind of grew up, well, as you can tell, in such a strict environment. My father had like anger issues, and I think I always kind of felt out the room before I walked in and things. And so I inadvertently was using my gifts, like practicing every day, which is why they're so strong now, even though I didn't realize what I was doing. But I would get snippets of people's conversations I could hear. And then I knew what people were thinking. And so, I sang a lot. So I was up on a stage. And so, because I could feel and hear and see all of this stuff directed at me. And it just gave me terrible like anxiety being in front of people. I mean, I would still do it because like with anything, you feel the fear and then you do it anyway. But I assumed that I was just really adept at reading body language, facial expressions and stuff. And then when I actually got to college, someone was saying something, I said at the same time as them. And then I started doing it to a lot of people because anytime I would drink, it would kind of open stuff up a little bit more. And so they were like, how are you doing that? I'm like, you know how you just read people's minds? And they were all like, no, what are you talking about? I'm like, y'all don't know what other people are thinking at all times. They're like, no. And then, while that's going on, I explode electronics. Always have, can't wear watches, have to get a new phone every 6 months. The screen, like if I get angry or like, frustrated or anxious, my screen will start to shake really badly. Like I'm terrible with electronics. So I knew that there was probably something wonky, but I had not really ever looked into this kind of thing before and would never have even realized it was like a spirituality based situation either. So I think I always knew, but it wasn't until last year in my book club, it was just a joke. The three of us, we all have children the same age. And we had been reading Bridgerton because one of us, not me, I'd never read historical romance a day in my life. She chose Bridgerton series. And I was just like, what is this nonsense? Because the women they just get pushed around all the time. It's just not a very empowered kind of situation in those books. And so I was joking about how my daughter would have turned it on its head. She would have been compromised just because that means being stuck by yourself in the room with a man. Now the woman is compromised and ruined. The men were just fine. The whole idea of that kind of situation was not my favorite, as you can tell. But anyway, I was writing a funny little short story about what would happen if our three girls were debuting. And it turned into, as I sat down to write this little story in the notes of my phone, it just got longer and longer and longer. And this whole story came out. And in I think 4 or 5 days, I had an entire novel length book. And it was so crazy because I didn't have an outline or a plot or anything. I just sat down. And then by the end of it, it was like this entire book with all these plot lines. Everything was really cohesive. And, I spent another week editing it. Then I put it on Amazon just to be funny. And that's where it started. It started garnering other people reading it. And it was just a joke. But I would always have people say, how are you doing that? And I'm like, oh, you just sit down and like write, and then the story comes out. And they're like, no, how are you doing that? And you're writing a book in a week. And then the editing makes sense because of my background with a lot of research papers and stuff, but I have no creative writing background whatsoever. I don't even like to write really. And I didn't, now it's fun, but anyway, and after my 4th or 5th book, so I guess it was around August, I was like, how am I doing that? I guess it is strange. And that's when I was literally Googling, guys. And it was like intuitive writing, except most people can't hold that for longer than 5 or 10 minutes. And so I was like, well, I guess it's kind of like that. And then maybe a week later, if that's probably a day later, because I've always had that like symbiotic relationship with the universe, like we all do, but I've always been sort of like, it's going to work out in my favor. And like when I need something, it will just pop up because I don't know. That's why the surrendering aspect of manifestation, if you do the law of attraction stuff, that's why I'm so good at that, as I just always have. I think that's the part that I got down pat. But I was just like, well, maybe if I'm meant to know what's happening, I'll know. And then Jen Gilchrist popped up into my newsfeed on Facebook, was like, do you need to learn to ground? I'm like, yeah, I'm terrible. I like blow things up electronically. I bet that's what I need to do. And I also tried Reiki right at the same time. And Reiki does not ground you. It increases the amount of like your capacity for energy. So I was like vibrating and shaking. So when Jen came up like the next day and was like, do you want to learn to ground? I was like, yes, I do. Because even when I had been meditating, because of the whole Reiki thing, I would start vibrating really badly. And I had no idea. I'm like, am I stroking out? Like, what's going on? But anyway, and then so the rest is history. I did her 4-day free series and then joined her group thinking, I'll be here just to learn to ground. So that's how it all began.
All right. So have you started using your psychic gifts professionally?
I know you enjoy asking me that question because obviously I met Amy and Rosemary in Jen Gilchrist class, and we would practice and do our certification stuff together. And you know how I felt. I was just there to ground, guys. Nothing has ever really changed in the sense of I have no interest in like reading people and doing the things. I was interested in doing it on myself, but really I was just there to ground. And I remember when we were having a session and you're like, oh, you're going to have this business and da-da-da. And I was like, I don't want to say you're wrong, but, you know, because I had no interest in that. And I still really did not, but because I'm always open to whatever it is that the universe has in store for me. I have started doing some, but it was so funny. It was one of those things of, and I don't think I've told you this story before, but maybe it's really only like this past June, I started getting the message of you should like help people. And I'm like, why I'm helping them, but I'm helping them. Sorry, there's a rabbit jumping across my yard. I feel like Snow White out here. All right. Anyway, so I was really resistant to it because I just felt like my gift to like help people be through writing. That made sense because why was I given the ability to sit down and write if that's not the thing that I'm supposed to be using to help people? And, you know, and in my books, even though they're historical romance, there's always life lessons. They're empowered women. They obviously would never have existed in that time period, or if they had, they would have been sent to an asylum. But it was one of those things where you can always tell when the universe is talking to you, because it was like, you need to start accepting money and like actually doing the business. And I was like, no, thank you. And so what I noticed is an increase of people being like, hey, write down the name Dorothy and tell me what you see. And, you know, stuff like that, that I was getting like 4 or 5 texts a day. Can you just pop in and do your magic? Can you just, and it was getting so incessant. And I am a very busy person. I don't have time to, because as you know, you don't just say, okay, let me look real fast. It's like, hold on, let me get to the right space. And so the universe was like, you need to start having your business and charging. We're going to keep doing this and we're going to make it worse. And I probably had one day, I had, I think 7 texts from people wanting me just to pop in real fast. You know, people don't ever realize that because they're like, this is one little thing for me. Right. But I've got 7 people wanting me to do that. And then I had 2 people, they're like, can I book a session with you? Like, how much do you charge? And I was like, oh my gosh, fine. And of course, as soon as I leaned into that, the other stuff just kind of went away. The only other time it's been a little bit of an issue, and I'm sure we'll talk about energetics later, but is when I needed to charge a little more, because you can just tell the universe will let you know. But even as it is, I don't advertise, I don't do anything, and I will literally just have a text from someone wanting to do it, because you know when you're aligned, people just come to you because that's where you're meant to be.
So besides all this other stuff that keeps you busy and your daughter and being a wife, What have you did in the past? What other careers have you done?
Well, I worked for my parents. We had a few different family businesses. So that's why I got my MBA, not because I thought business was interesting for sure. And, it's so funny because the way the universe works, like I'm obviously very well suited now with a background in psychology and business to help entrepreneurs and business owners that are trying to amp up, their visibility and stuff. But I spent 2 decades just doing stuff for my parents, and it was miserable. And that feeling of stuckness, I know you have to know. I know you'll have to know because that's sort of kind of what pushes us to our like spiritual awakening anyway, is you can just tell something's not right. And it feels like you're slogging through the day. It's more difficult than it should be, but you just know you're not where you're supposed to be. You can just tell. And so I had that feeling of being stuck for like 2 decades, but I legitimately was like, I could tell what I was not supposed to be doing, but I was having a really hard time kind of figuring out what I was supposed to be doing. And a lot of that was because I was completely ungrounded. So I was probably missing the majority of the messages that I was receiving, but also it's difficult because there was like family stuff involved. But it's been interesting because the universe will push you the direction you need to go eventually if you're not listening. And that is legitimately, so like my parents have been married for 44 years and decided to get a divorce. And so like overnight, no longer have a job, don't talk to my dad anymore, which there's always a really silver lining, even in these situations. We'll say it like that. And so even though when this terrible thing happens, it just like, I'm like, your family breaks apart and it's all like, just crazy happenings. Well, I mean, it was really it's for my greater good. It was in my best interest. So that sort of gave me freedom because, I had spent all this time, like my dad had a heart transplant. My mom had a brain tumor. I was running their stuff. Like I couldn't just stop, you know what I mean? And so it's kind of this, it's like, I get it. I get that I'm not supposed to be here, but yet I have no choice. And the universe is like, ha, 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 yes, you do. And like, I'll tear it all apart to make room for better. Right. And so now I'm super grateful. And I know it sounds terrible. It's very difficult when I talk about the subject, not emotionally, because I do all the shadow work. I love the shadow work. But because it sounds like I'm woo about, like the divorce and my family being torn apart and then losing this really well-paying job that allowed me to travel the world and do things. But I'm like, yeah, but really, even with all the traveling, like most people are like, oh my gosh, I was gone all the time, always traveling. Even Fee has been to my 10-year-old daughter has been to like a bazillion different countries and things. But I was tired of it, you know what I mean? Because it still wasn't right. And so you get burned out when you're not doing what you're aligned to do. So I'm grateful for the opportunities for sure. Like, I don't want it to ever sound like I'm not, but I'm also grateful to be exactly where I'm at in this present moment, because I mean, it's been such a blessing for me and, to be able to help other people. So.
Awesome. So do you have any interesting stories from your psychic work or from your gifts developing?
I have a bazillion stories, but the one that I'll say is, y'all, this is crazy. This just happened last Thursday. What day is today? So today is Sunday. So this happened on Thursday, basically. Okay. So as an author, I'm an independent author, called an indie author. So it's very difficult to get your book out there and seen, which worked out fantastically for me because of my visibility fears. When you have an upbringing where one of the parents is like emotionally and verbally abusive, you tend to keep yourself small. And I also have a sister that had insane sibling rivalry and, super critical and always trying to like bash me. So anyway, I'm used to like keeping myself really small, right? So putting yourself out there for like judgment and criticism of your books doesn't feel fantastic when you are in that mode of must stay small. And it's been fun to watch because I have like 10 people download the book. And then as I got better, it'd be like 250 people. But anyway, so what's happened is there's this one website that all book people know. It's called BookBub. And their subscribers, they have like 10 million people that subscribe to them, get their newsletter, go onto their website. And so if you can get a book promoted on there, well, you're in front of 10 million people, right? But there are all these requirements for your book. It has to have a professional cover that's genre specific, which I did do a book optimization class like in April and May, just because I got the nudge. That's what I always say when I hear or know to do it. And so I had redone my covers. A friend had done them for me first. I don't know the first thing about that kind of thing, but I learned Canva and Photoshop and all the things, but it has to actually be like professional grade cover. Well, I did my own. And then you have to have perfect editing. I did my own. And, you know, like formatting your ad copy, your sales page, all the things, which I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm sure they're not terrible. Then it's like, it's best to have awards. Well, I've never even submitted for an award because that would have made more people look at me at the time, right? And then it's best if a well-known author writes a blurb for you. Okay, I did have social anxiety, or that's what I used as a crutch so long. Now I don't, because ground put around my bubble and I'm fine. But I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go try and befriend an author just for them to say something. That's not how I operate. So I was like, this isn't gonna work. There's no way, because like I don't meet all the requirements. And they were like, really, it's best to have like 1,000 book reviews. Well, I have like 100, which to me is like, oh my gosh, 100, you know. And so it was like, just submit it and just, you know, set your intention, add your little woo magic to it. It's gonna be great. And I was like, okay. So I go to submit it and it's like, do you meet all these requirements? I'm like, apparently it doesn't matter, because I'm just gonna put some magic and woo behind it. And so after I submitted, they're like, you're probably not gonna get chosen. Make sure that next time you follow all of the requirements, because it's so competitive. They get like over 100 submissions a day of books, right? And so then it goes to an editorial board who they have to read it, they have to judge all your stuff. So I was like, I set my intentions. I was like, all right, guys, you're gonna love this book. And I tried to actually like zero in on their energy. I was like, oh, there's someone with glasses, you know, like just trying to figure out, like, you're gonna be open-minded to the fact that I don't have some of these requirements, right? So then the next morning, I saw like 3 copies of the book had been purchased, and that a couple people were reading it on Kindle. And I was like, oh my gosh, even though it could be anyone. I was like, oh, it's the book by people. So I sent out my like intention again. I was like, you're gonna love the book, you're gonna love me, and you're going to immediately decide that you want it, which is funny because it normally takes about 7 days because they have all those submissions to go through. And but about 4 hours later, I got my email saying, we've chosen your book for our page November 1st through the 5th. And I was just like, I was very overwhelmed. I was like near tears, because I was like, but now, of course, I was like, oh my gosh, hold on, everyone. I'm sorry, 10 million people. So I was like, that's a visibility stretch in itself, but that is clearly an energetic, spiritual situation, because there was really, I think the most people like in newsletter wise I'd ever been in front of was about 400,000 people. And it's so impossible. That's what I'm saying. Anyone that's an author that like watches this will understand, because it's very much, BookBub is like the thing, and it's so hard, and no one ever gets chosen the first time, like ever. So anyway, but that's like the coolest thing that happened, because I just got my email on Friday. Yeah, it was like less than 16 hours, the entire thing. But
awesome. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So besides meeting us, what have you loved most about this spiritual journey? Because everybody comes into your life for a reason, but besides that, because we loved meeting you when we all joined this group. So what have you loved about your spiritual journey so far?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword for sure. I say that to everyone because, as you know, it's not for the faint of heart. I think just basic things, learning to ground is life-changing. It just is. It made my life a lot easier, because once I learned to ground, everything else kind of just slotted into place really easily. And so it helps me. I don't have to pick up other people's energy. I don't have to know what they're thinking. I don't have to do any of that if I don't want to. But I've gotten rid of that annoying stuck sensation that I felt for 20 plus years, which like by itself is a gift, because you know how uncomfortable it is. And to be in that sensation for decades, it's very, very, very uncomfortable. So I feel like those things have probably been my favorite beyond meeting people, because honestly, I know, well, this would probably be in a next question of what don't you like? So I'll save it, because like I said, it's a double-edged sword, and it's been easier for me to find the negative, because anytime I don't love change, and that sounds crazy, but I don't adore change. And this has been like, if I didn't know how to swim and someone threw me into the ocean, in the like 5,000 feet deep ocean, because I'm so new to it still, and there's so many different things. So that's why I try, everyone asks me that all the time, and I'm like, well, I learned to ground. I don't feel stuck anymore. I've met a lot of good people. And I mean, obviously I'm able to like make things happen, you know what I mean, that would never have happened. And I've got all these really cool opportunities that I would not have had otherwise. So
When you were talking about, setting the intention and tapping into that editorial board, like, you will like my book, it reminded me of like Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars.
And it's funny, I learned that one early on. I don't remember what class we were in, and that was not what we were doing, but I realized one of my friends was like, oh man, I forgot to like turn in a report, and I'm gonna have to go talk to my boss today. What should I do? And I was like, oh, ground, and that kind of stuff. And then I was like, but you could set the energy for your conversation here. Let me do it. Let me see if because we were practicing and stuff. And I was like, you will show her grace. And like, I just imagine, I did all the little stuff, and I did not tell her that I said that. Well, then she came over and she was like, oh, it's great. I didn't get in trouble. He was like, you know what? I'm going to show you grace. And I was like, uh-oh, am I reading people's mind, or am I like implanting it? Because but the thing is, you have free will of choice. So people
Right.
don't have to, but when you set the energy, you have the upper hand in the situation. Plus, most of the time it's like, I will be cool, calm, and collected. So like for today, when I set my intention for this interview, it was just, I'll speak like succinctly and say whatever it is that I need to say. But I didn't remotely try and say, and then they will ask me only easy questions. I didn't do any of that. I just like, let me say what I need to say, which is pretty much my intention with all my clients, with anything that I do. It's just, let me channel whatever message it is that I need to channel and go on about my day.
Awesome. So what have you liked the least about your spiritual journey?
How many hours you got? No, I was kidding. It is like, well, you understand how uncomfortable it is. There's a lot of growth, because things that are comfortable don't grow, right? And then like, if you're being successful and there's all these things going your way, well, you're tending not to notice the misalignments that you have. But that is literally like what we're supposed to be doing is, okay, this is the person I want to be. This is the person I am now. Show me the misalignments from being this person to this person. Because if we didn't have any misalignments, we'd already be up here, but we're not. And so what we've done is really springboard ourselves energetically into a lot of situations that it's like back to back to back to back to back life lessons. Because, I always say that you can tell when you're through with one lesson, because that poo doesn't show up anymore. New poo shows up, right? And so I was like, so it's literally always, I feel like I'm always working on something. I feel like that like in every area of my life. But, like even with books, that would be a good analogy. Is, okay, I wrote a book. Well, now you have to edit it. Okay. Well, now you need to learn how to make a cover. Okay. Well, now you need to know how to make good ad copy. Well, now I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh, then you have to have a web page. Now I have to learn web design. So it's similar with the spiritual world too, because there's a bazillion different modalities. And the reason I even have 1,000 different certifications was not because I was like, oh, I really want to learn to do this or learn to do that. I don't mind. I'm open to the things. But I never knew what anyone was talking about. Like, even when I joined the class to learn to ground, most people, maybe not everyone, but most people had more experience. And I didn't even know what the Akashic records were. I didn't know what anything. But when I went to Jen's 4-day series and she talked about the galactic, I'm like, is she talking about aliens? Like, I mean, blew my mind. And like the dragons and I was just like, is she for real? But I could tell that she knew what she was talking about with grounding because I could feel it. So that's why I kept going. But it's been very uncomfortable. So I don't love that, but I do love the outcome of leaning into the uncomfortable. That's what I'm saying. I don't think people love to constantly be challenged, but we love the benefit of being challenged and rising to the occasion. So I think that, and also I hate not knowing stuff. So being surrounded, but that's one of my cycles that I have to give up is control. So I just had to lean into not knowing what people were talking about a lot of the time and just being okay with the fact that, and the thing is, it's not all for us. Like I can already tell, like someone will be like, and I do the tarot card readings. And I'm like, and it's like, that's not for you. And I'm like, okay, that's not for me. So that's super helpful when you get your messages from your guides and you understand what they're saying, because that helps me out a lot. Like Akashic records and the people with the ceremonies to get into it. And I'm like, and they're like, that's not for you. And I'm like, oh, and like human design. That's just not for me. Like I've tried, I know everybody loves it. It's just not for me. And that's okay, because there's so many things we're obviously not all going to like the same things and do the same things, which is important because that's how you know who's resonating with you and wants to actually work with you.
That's exactly how I feel with tarot cards. I've tried forever. I said, they're just not the way I'm supposed to do it. I can flip a card and say something, but I've tried for years. I'm like, this is not for me. Like, that after a while, like, how can all these other people understand this? And I'm like, so confused. So I am right with you on that stuff. So any advice for people that with the psychic abilities who are just getting started on their awakening in their journey? Like, what do you think is a good, I mean, everybody has their own plan, but do's and don'ts for them?
Yes. And I actually made a note. Sorry, there's like a mosquito. Do be open to new experiences. Do listen to yourself and try and develop your intuition, but don't get confused between your ego and your intuition. Have a discernment. If it's a negative voice, if you're hearing something negative, that is not your intuition. It doesn't work that way. It is your pesky ego trying to shut you down, make you feel bad. It's all the programming you had from early in your life. Your voice is the thing that you respond to and believe the most. It's like you believe something you say to yourself like 30 times more than you believe somebody else saying it to you. So what you say to yourself does matter. That's why affirmations are really important, and why, like, my husband has gotten used to my almost Tourette's like thing. I'll hear something negative, I'm like, not helpful, and I'll say it out loud, and then I'll turn it around and say something positive instead, because I understand that even thinking the thoughts is hearing my voice and believing it. So show discernment, learn to ground. I'm like, and learn to call your energy back, because we're such a busy culture at this point in time that our energy is left all over the place. We're planning for this, we're planning for that. So especially whenever you get that scattered feeling, remember to call your energy back. It's yours. Don't give it away to other people. Keep it for yourself, and then you can make a lot more progress in life. But do not, this is the big one, do not compare your spiritual gifts to anybody else, because we're all really different. And, for a lot of us that were in groups together, well, that person can see, and that person can do this, and that person can do that. So that's not your path. That's not your higher purpose. You do what you're supposed to do, and you don't worry about what they're doing, because they're meant for one thing, you're meant for others. They're meant for some group of people. You're meant for your specific group of people. So it doesn't do yourself any favors to worry about what everybody else is doing. Listen to your own messages and know that whatever you're doing is exactly right for you.
So, do you have any advice for those of us wanting to start a spiritually based business or service?
I do. And I wrote them down because I primarily work with coaches. Like I got that message early on. It was like, you're going to coach coaches. I was like, I'm not coaching anyone, and you can't make me, because I have free will of choice. Well, and the thing is, we're always meant to get here. So if you want to go this way and waste time, the universe lets you. But the best thing to do is just be like, fine. So normally anytime, even when I got that in July, when it was like, you have to work with people, it was less than 24 hours. I was like, fine, you know what? you haven't led me astray yet. Like following the things that I hear are going to work. But I wrote these down because this is what I literally do with people all the time. So I was like, okay, what's the easiest way to explain the best ways to get yourself started? Know your why and make certain you're clear on it. The universe wants to help you achieve the things you're emotionally invested in, because where your attention goes, your energy flows. We all know that. That is both a reminder and a warning, guys. Okay. So your business should be doing something that lights you up and therefore lights your energy up in positive ways, right? We don't want to approach anything with that energy, because we won't get into the science of the law of attraction, but like attracts like. So let's just remember that. Be clear on the amount of hours you wish to spend on your business. The fastest way to burn yourself out is by having this wrong, okay? By spending too much time on it. This one and the next one are the things that every time, like that's where I pretty much start with people. This is so important to get these two things right. Know how much money you wish to make for your business. Like I said, I can talk for days on the energetics of money and why it's so important to make sure that you're aligned, but basically just know how much you wish to make based on the lifestyle you wish to have. So if you're like, I'll be fine with $10,000 a month, but your bills are, 8,000 of them, and you want to travel and you want to do this and you want to do that, and you need to get more crystals, and that's not going to work for you. And so you're not going to be aligned. You know what I mean? So make sure you've got that. All right. And I need everyone to pay attention. Never underestimate your value. You must charge what you're worth. Okay. This is very important. If you are charging less than your actual value, you're not going to attract your clients. Okay. So I don't mean, so then double the thing and be like, okay, I'll charge that. If you don't think that you're worth what you're charging, look at yourself, use that as a trigger. That should have been somewhere on here. Always use your triggers, because that's like the biggest gift from the universe. It's so that you can go back and kind of see what's going on. But another one, never barter, because you want the universe to know that you're serious about making money. I see it all the time. They're like, okay, if you like, when it's an equal energetic exchange, it's one thing, but your hairstylist wants a session with you and you're like, well, then I could get my hair. Don't do that. The universe thinks that you're fine with not making money and just still kind of doing that. And for them, the universe rewards those who invest in themselves. I cannot stress this enough. I was helping people for free beforehand, and they were making like some strides. Oh my gosh. Once I started charging and people started actually investing in themselves, they took off. I can't even tell you how successful. I have nutrition coaches, fitness, spiritual artists, like all these different people. And it's like they decide to invest in themselves, and the universe like rewards it immediately. So it's just a really good symbiotic relationship between you and your clients. They're investing in themselves. You're showing that you value your worth and that you're serious about making money. Okay. Make sure your time goals and money goals align. So you want to make sure both of those things align, but they must align with each other. Meaning, if you're starting your business and you're like, I want to make $50,000 a month, and I only want to spend 5 hours a week doing it. Come on. Like, it would be very rare. I mean, everybody is different, but the chances starting up a business, come on, that's never going to work for you. The universe knows that you're going to get burnout. Well, actually, you're just not going to attract the clients that you want, but because you would have to, of course, charge them like $5,000 a piece. And, if you don't have that credibility built up, then it's going to be a problem. Everyone is unique, but a lot of common issues. So be prepared to pivot whenever needed. I'll like start off a session for business, and I do personal too, but I prefer to do business because it's really fulfilling to watch people like grow and succeed. But I'll like know what we're going to talk about, and then they'll come in and they've just got another situation personally that's affecting the business as well. So then I'm like, oh, let's go look at this and see how it pertains, because the universe, like their higher self, is going to tell you what you need to do or talk about to best help both situations. When you set your intention to help the people move their business along, well, then whatever you see is what's going to help you for the day. So be prepared to pivot. Don't just have your 3, 4, 5 talking points and like things that you want to do for the day. I mean, that's great, but you're going to have flexibility. So, and I know a lot of people are like, well, I wrote this program, and so it's like a one size fits all. I'm like, it's not ever going to be a one size fits all. Everyone's unique. Be open to new experiences. Like I mentioned before, did not want to be a coach, but I do technically have the perfect background for it. So, I mean, the universe has put you where you're supposed to be for a reason, guys. So just be open to it, even if it feels very uncomfortable, because that's the point. This is going to help you grow to reach your higher purpose. And the last one, stay grounded in the present moment and enjoy the journey. It's the reason we're all here on the planet, to take it all in and be prepared to watch your future expand right before your very eyes. And that is so true. We spend a lot of time setting intentions and looking towards the future, but the way to best do that is stay grounded in the now and always be grateful for where you're at. And I'm sure that everyone can come up with 1,000 things they're grateful for, but always be grateful, because that is the energy we want to send out into the universe and get back again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon, for all those tips. We are going to put links for your books or your, wherever, whatever links that you have, we'll provide those in with the YouTube channel. But how can people find you? Like, do you want people to find you? And like, how do they find you?
I'll give you the links to my books. If you want to read historical romance, that's fun. I always assume, because I put out my intention to attract readers and things. I don't really worry about that. And I set out my intention to just serve the people that I'm supposed to serve. So normally I don't like have a website for that kind of thing, because people just tend to find me. But I am on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. If you do want to chat with me about anything that I talked about, just message me on one of those, because like I said, if you feel like you're meant to work with me, then come on. But I really don't normally like do that, just because I don't know, that's just the way that it works. We don't know why sometimes, we just know that that's the way that it works. So
awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. It was so fun talking to you and hearing your story, and it was very inspiring, and we just appreciate you so much. And it's been fun, that our paths have crossed in class, and I'm glad that we get to continue to be friends and be in each other's lives. So thank you so much for coming today.
thank you for having me. I had a good time.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.